It was one of the most startling covers ever published by Time magazine. On April 8, 1966, they dared to ask a question that a lot of people in ivory towers had already been asking. Is God dead? In the modern age, was there any proof that God exists? Or was he just a fairy tale dreamed up to make us feel better about the brutality of human existence? Today, on It Is Written, we're going to look at one of the most fundamental questions ever asked. Does God really exist? It has stood the test of time. God's book, the Bible. Still relevant in today's complex world. It is written. Sharing hope around the globe. Presented by Shawn Boonstra and Mark Finley. Does God really exist? Number 1 in the Big 5 Questions About Life.
A little while ago, I was flying across the country, and I discovered to my delight that my seatmate was a great travel companion. We shared a lot of common interests, so we were able to pass the time quite well. But then the subject of religion came up. "What do you do for a living?" she asked me. "Well," I said, "I'm a minister." "Wow," she said, "that's really interesting. I'm an atheist." "Really?" I asked. Because, to be honest, I don't actually believe in atheists. Not if you define atheist as someone who knows for sure there is no God. As she started to explain her lack of faith, she said, "Listen, when I was a kid, some pretty awful things happened to me. And when I went to the minister looking for answers, he didn't have any. So even though today I find religion very interesting, I personally don't have much faith that God exists." So, as it turns out, my new friend wasn't really certain that God doesn't exist. She was just disappointed with her experience. Today, Pastor Mark Finley and I are going to wrestle with one of the biggest philosophical questions of all time. Does God really exist? Mark, as always, I'm delighted that we can spend some time together today.
I'm delighted again, Shawn, to be able to have this dialogue about the existence of God.
Yeah, it's really one of the questions that has captivated philosophers and thinkers for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And you know, Mark, you've been in ministry now for going on 40 years. You've traveled the world, and I'm sure you've run into a lot of people who wrestle with that question, does God really exist? And you know, Mark, I'm thinking in particular of a time when you addressed a group in Eastern Europe some time ago that claimed to be atheistic. They actually challenged you to prove that God exists, didn't they?
Well, Shawn, that was a fascinating experience. I was in Eastern Europe when the Berlin Wall fell. I began to work in Eastern Europe back in the late 80s, 87, 88, 89, under communism. And when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, I was preaching in Hungary and in the capital city of Budapest.
That must have been a remarkable experience.
It was remarkable. You know, thousands of people marched in the streets, and you saw during those years, right after the collapse of the Berlin Wall, this hunger for God. The universities opened up, and I was invited to come to numerous universities to speak to the students on the subject of God and the existence of God. And one of the things that happened was quite fascinating. The president of one of the universities in Hungary came to me, and he said, "Now, Dr. Finley, would you be willing to come and lecture at our university?" And the